Good morning, stream. Welcome to my Insomnia stream. We are again reading Oracle today. We started it just the other night. So now we are on to chapter 2. Once again, I want to thank you guys for tuning in and following me as I read along, and I hope that you guys enjoy it. If you like this and you wish to purchase the book, it is available on Amazon. Um, my author name is J.C. Roberts, which is my first and middle initial and my last name. Um, that being said, we'll go ahead and keep reading, starting with chapter 2 now. So thank you guys very much for tuning in. All right, chapter 2. The next morning, I awoke to the smell of eggs and bacon, a relieving scent given all that had happened. Part of me still wondered if it had simply been some sort of hallucination caused by an injury at the museum. Not that it mattered any more. Apollo had sworn to leave me alone. That meant the end of it. Going to the bathroom to shower, I carefully removed the bandage from my arm. To my surprise, beneath the gooey green and red paste, my arm had healed completely. There was a little soreness, but otherwise it felt good as new. I would have to remember to thank Artemis when I quickly silenced that thought. I would not be seeing her again. There would be no next time because she wasn't real and didn't exist. As I soaked in the warm water, I could feel the stress of the situation flowing off of my body. I'd be okay. It wasn't as if the hallucinations had told me to do anything dangerous necessarily. They didn't order me to hurt anyone or myself. Besides, now that they were gone, that meant that I was, in a sense, cured. No padded walls for me. When I stepped out, I'd pushed the twins from my mind. There was more of a pep in my step, and I was ready to face the day with my return to school. As I walked down the stairs, my father sat reading the newspaper. "Good morning," I called cheerfully, sitting down at the plate he'd made for me. "Good morning," he replied. "Are you heading off to school?" "If I said no, you'd make me go anyway, so yes, I am heading off to school," I answered sarcastically. Rolling up the paper, he playfully smacked me over the top of the head. "Thank you for your help yesterday," he said as I scarfed down my breakfast. "I wouldn't have been able to do that field trip otherwise. The stupid board cares so much more about their precious computers that they forget about the benefits of learning things firsthand. It's ridiculous." "Dad, no offense, but next time pick a museum where the curator doesn't make hyperactive children want to take naps." He was a little dry, wasn't he? My father chuckled. "Anyway, shouldn't you be getting to school?" "Yeah, I suppose so," I agreed, standing up to clean my plate in the sink. As I did, my mind once more drifted back to the beautiful goddess I'd met in my imagination yesterday. "Hey, Dad, out of curiosity, do you know anything about Greek mythology?" "Nope. My master's degree in mythology and ancient history never really covered ancient Greek mythology," he smirked. I definitely got my sarcasm from my father. "What do you need to know about?" "The goddess Artemis. I had a weird dream yesterday that I'd met her, but she was less than friendly." "Can't say I'm surprised. Artemis had a rather difficult life." Immediately my smile faded. "How so?" "Well, much like other children of Zeus, she was hated by Hera from the moment she was born. Even before that, really. Shortly after she was born, she had to deliver her twin brother, Apollo. Worse, mythology is full of accounts of men spying on her while she's bathing, trying to suppress her, or even rape her. As such, she had a renowned hatred of men." "That does explain a lot," I mused. "Even still, she's one of the purest gods by far. In a mythology laced with politics and corruption, she always stands at the forefront of following her heart and doing what she feels is right, no matter what others think." "Maybe your dream is trying to tell you something about what to do with your life," he suggested. Well, that comfort I'd had was gone now. I should have known my father would turn the subject into some not-so-subtle urging towards college. I hadn't begun sending out applications yet. So what? I still had the rest of the semester and the entirety of spring to decide what I wanted to do. The career aptitude tests we took in school told me I was suited for politics. The thought made me grimace more than the thought of becoming a teacher like my father wanted. "Well, thanks, Dad. I was just curious, really. I'll see you tonight." "Bye, son. Have a good day at school." "Yes, sir." With that, I was out the door and on the streets. The cool, crisp autumn air was as much of a relief as my shower was, and I couldn't help but appreciate the red and golds of the leaves that littered the sidewalk. The sky was clear and beautiful, and the gentle breeze that rolled through me helped to soothe my mind. It wasn't long until I'd arrived at the massive brick building that was my high school, right on time. The moment I stepped inside, I changed directions and began walking towards my locker. I always enjoyed the locker that I had been assigned. The school hadn't had enough lockers originally, so when they installed new ones, they were a bit more secluded. My luck netted me one. The two students who had been on either side of me had moved away almost a month into the semester, leaving me alone with all the space I could need. Placing my backpack inside the locker, I heard a meek voice beside me say, "Excuse me, could you help me open my locker?" Well, so much for the isolation. Even still, I couldn't refuse to help a new student, especially since she'd asked so sweetly. Sure thing. Do you know your combination? I asked, closing my door before freezing in place. My eyes were now staring into the crystal blues of Artemis. Judging by the shock on her face, she had recognized me as well. "Oh, this is just freaking perfect," she growled, the cute tone she'd had now replaced with one of irritation. "First, the stupid locker won't open, and now this idiot is here." "No, no, no, no," I murmured in shock. "No, you can't be here. You can't. You're not real. You're just a hallucination who—" She suddenly spun, grabbing a student and pinning him against the lockers with his arm behind his back. "Did I say you could touch me?" she hissed at him. "The next time you lay hands on me, I swear I will tear them off and feed them to the crows." "I'm sorry," he squealed. "I was just trying to return the schedule you dropped. See?" His free arm raised to show the piece of paper he was referring to. Artemis snatched the slip from his grasp before releasing him. "Let's be perfectly clear," she threatened. "My butt is not where you should touch when you want to get my attention. Otherwise, the next place I touch when I want yours will be your balls shortly before I rip them off." Nodding in fear of the surprisingly aggressive woman, he took off running down the hall. I wasn't hallucinating. Someone else had seen her. She was real. She was very real and very mean, and now was probably contemplating shooting me for having bumped into her again. "Well, what are you staring at?" she snapped at me, folding up her schedule neatly and tucking it in the breast pocket of her school uniform. Nothing," I swore, quickly turning my attention back to my locker. "That's what I thought," she mumbled, giving her dial another few spins. When she went to open the locker, it didn't budge. "Damn it!" She slammed her hand in frustration against the metal door. "I will," an all too familiar voice greeted on the other side of me. My luck could not possibly be getting any worse. "What are the odds of this, huh? Getting lockers right next to yours? That's pretty amazing if I do say so myself." I turned on him, a glare in my eyes. "What the hell, man?" I hissed. "You said you'd leave me alone. What are you doing here?" "Our own business," Artemis quipped behind me. "Did you think I'd honestly come here if I'd known you were here?" "Me? What did I do? I wasn't the one who nearly got you killed." "You're an idiot, and that's what almost got you killed." "It's also enough of a reason for me to not want to hang around with you. Gods forbid, but it may be contagious," she said, just as she tried again to open her locker. "To the crows with this thing," she growled. "Do you want some help?" I offered. "Does it look like I need your help, moron?" she spat. "Sister, you did technically ask him," Apollo pointed out, causing her to give him a death glare. "Just saying." With that, Apollo turned to his own locker and opened it easily, placing his bag and guitar in the locker. Just as he'd gotten his things, he turned to see a gaggle of giggling girls walking by as they stared at him. "Now, if you two will excuse me, I have to pull an Artemis." He smirked before slipping in with the group. "Hello, ladies. I'm new to the school. Think you can help me find my class?" he asked as they escorted him down the hall. "He's such a pig," Artemis grumbled to herself. "He calls his perversion pulling an Artemis because he's chasing tails. It's so stupid." Again, she couldn't manage to get her locker open. Her chest was heaving in great anger now, and part of me wondered if it would be safer to offer my help again or to just grab my things and leave. I had the feeling she was too proud to ask me for my help again. "Hi, Momo. Welcome back. Are you comfortable?" "That's good." She wanted to be involved. She says hi. "May I?" I offered, hoping that if I didn't use the word help, she'd let me. "Knock yourself out," she sighed, stepping back with her arms crossed. "This stupid thing won't open. I keep putting in my combination, but it just won't." Slamming my weight down on the latch hard, there was an audible snap before I pulled it up and the door swung open. "What? How did you—" Reaching inside, I pulled out a small broken pencil. "Ah, here's your culprit. The last owner of the locker probably had it rigged so he didn't have to put in his combination. He probably forgot to fix it when he left, and it just got jammed in the latch." Offering her the pencil, she looked at the tiny thing, seething with fury. I couldn't tell if she was angry because I'd managed to get it open, or if it was because something so trivial had been what hindered her from her goal. "Not another word," she warned me, tossing the pencil into a nearby garbage can. "You're welcome," I mumbled under my breath. "What did you just say to me?" "I said you're welcome," I replied with a sigh. "I didn't thank you," she argued. "Yeah, I'm aware." What's that supposed to mean? It means I know you didn't thank me, and you feel I owe you one. Well, yeah, I do. Well, you can just take your thank you and shove it up your. She paused for a moment, closing her eyes and trying to calm herself down. Listen, Will, was it? I'm not going to thank you. I'm not going to praise you for every little thing that you do. If you want my gratitude, you'll have to actually try for it, not by snapping a pencil and opening my locker. I was trying to do something nice, I protested. I was doing it out of courtesy. You know, that thing where you're kind to people. Oh, I know why you did it, she growled, and it had nothing to do with courtesy or chivalry or whatever other words you want to hide your twisted motives behind. You did it because you knew I was struggling and you wanted to prove yourself better than me, but I'll be damned if I call you my better. What are you talking about? I asked in exasperation. I don't think I'm better than you. I just wanted to help. I don't need your help, she stated flatly, grabbing her things. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'll be getting to class. She paused to glance at her paper. 118 Mathematics. Actually, I don't really care if you excuse me. Just stay out of my way and we won't have a problem. With that, she strutted right past me, her strawberry blonde hair flowing in front of my face and filling my nostrils with the scent of pine. My eyes followed her as she swayed gently with her walking, and I wondered if I should warn her that she was going the wrong direction for the class we apparently shared. My sense of self-preservation outweighed my kindness in the end, and so I went straight to math with hopes that she wouldn't notice me when she sat down. When I walked into the class, I immediately realized my predicament. The only two empty seats were on either side of me. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself down. It was bad enough discovering that gods and goddesses were a thing. It was worse that that of the two I'd met, one of them hated me with a fiery passion. Now, I was about to be forced to sit beside her for an entire hour and a half after not stopping her to warn her she was going the wrong direction. Heaven help me. Sinking into my seat, I put my head on my arms and awaited for my inevitable smiting at the hands of the wrathful archer. So much for my calm, serene day. Whoa, Apollo commented when he arrived, sinking into one of the seats beside me. Looks like we're in the same class, Will. Awesome. And it just kept getting better. Help me, I wheezed. What? What's the matter? He asked. I helped Artemis open her locker, I explained, causing Apollo to wince. Then she walked off in the wrong direction, and I didn't stop her because she was already mad that I'd opened her locker. Ooh, yeah, you're in trouble, he agreed. Artemis is typically one of your catch-22 girls. You're damned if you do and damned if you don't. Like the lady and the tiger at the same time, I noted. I don't suppose it's too much to hope for a quick death. Probably. I gave a groan, thumping my head against the desk. You, Artemis seethed the moment she stepped into the classroom and laid eyes on me. You little insignificant rat of a man. Now, sis, Apollo tried, standing between us. Calm down. He's got a very valid reason. Butt out, Apollo. Just sit down, he instructed. You have to hear him out first, okay? If you don't like his reason, then you can thrash him or whatever after school. Hmm? His words were accented with a wave of his finger to indicate to her that the entire class now had their eyes on her. Her face went pale as she then very quickly found her seat beside me. Fine, she whispered. I'll listen to your reason. Pray to the gods that it's a good one. Paula sat on the other side of me, giving me a reassuring pat on the back. Go ahead, Will. Tell her. Tell her? I hissed. Really? He nodded emphatically. With a nervous sigh, I turned to look her in the eyes. When I did, it was then that I saw something that I hadn't expected. Fear. What was it that was so frightening that even a god was scared of it? Artemis, I didn't stop you because I thought you would be even more mad at me than you already were if I did. Her eyes narrowed. That's the best you can... She stopped herself again before calmly asking, Why would you think that? Well, you were upset when I helped you open your locker. You accused me of doing it out of, I don't know, something. I was scared if I helped you again, it'd just upset you more. So I kept quiet and hoped you wouldn't notice I was in the same class. I guess that was hoping too much. She fell quiet for a moment. I forgive you for not telling me, she stated. I can understand why you felt you were in that predicament, but next time, just tell me. I'd be more angry with you for letting me be wrong than I would for correcting me. Wow, a rare Artemis forgiveness, Apollo commented behind me. Haven't seen one of those in a long time. I ran rigid, expecting her to flip the switch that put her back into a rage, but instead she just sat there, staring at her desk looking crestfallen. Something was definitely wrong. Just as I was about to ask her if something was bothering her, the teacher came in and started the class. I'd have to wait until the next period switched to talk to her. As he began passing out worksheets to go with the lecture, I watched as Artemis and Apollo almost immediately went to town. They filled out their sheets quickly before waiting patiently for the class to end. I didn't realize both were so good at math. So, the teacher explained, the Pythagorean theorem that we will be using today originates from ancient Greece, where a philosopher by the name of Pythagoras, jerk, Artemis commented under her breath, made the formula. No, he didn't, Apollo murmured. Legend has it that he used it first to settle a disagreement over land. Ripped off, Artemis blithely muttered, with a neighbor who had tried to cheat him out of a river for his farmstead. I was having a hard time concentrating with the commentary from the two gods. It was odd to realize that the two would have actually known him during that time. Despite that they looked like they were both 18, they must have been exceedingly older. It made me chuckle a little to think of Artemis as a crotchety old lady stuck in a teenager's body. Was he really that bad? I asked Artemis. She seemed surprised that I had heard her, but still she nodded. Oh yeah, he was the worst. That formula he claimed to invent had been around for thousands of years before him. His neighbor wasn't trying to cheat him. His neighbor split the land in half, but Pythagoras didn't want half. He decided he wanted more of the river that flowed through it for his crops, so he basically split it in a different way to trick his neighbor into thinking it was a fair deal when it wasn't. I was anxious to ask her more questions about ancient Greece. I couldn't help but wonder if many of the lessons I'd learned about history were wrong. Again, I chuckled, this time at the thought of Artemis getting into a heated argument with my dad because he didn't know something she'd experienced firsthand. What are you laughing at? She asked sternly. Nothing, sorry, I replied. I just had a funny thought was all. Yeah, well, keep those funny thoughts in your head, she suggested, just as the bell rang. As everyone stood up to gather their things, I was surprised to look up and see Artemis still standing there as if to wait for me. We exchanged puzzled glances for a moment until she called out, Apollo, hurry up, we're going to be late. I blinked in surprise. I couldn't believe I'd forgotten all about Apollo. Yeah, I'm coming, he assured her, zipping up his pack and slinging it over his shoulder. What class do you have next, Will? English. Is it on the way to room 281? I bit my lip. This was getting a little eerie now. It, is in room 281, I replied softly. Oh, great, Artemis sighed. What about room 137 science? Yes, that's my third period. Well, this is certainly awkward, Apollo commented. It seems we'll be joining you for those two as well. What about the rest? Gazing down at the schedule he presented me, I was surprised to find they were in every single one of my classes. My expression must have given it away because Apollo folded it back up and tucked it into his pocket. Looks like she's up to something, he murmured. Yeah, but what? So she's putting us with this mortal. Who cares? Artemis replied. Clearly you do, I grumbled, causing her to shoot me a glare. I held up my hands in surrender. Anyway, for now, let's play with our hands close to our chest, Artemis suggested. She'll slip up eventually, and then we'll have our opportunity. Who exactly is she? I asked. No one that concerns you, the huntress snootily shot. Now, are you going to lead us to the room, or not? This way, I sighed, gesturing towards the staircase. As we ascended the steps, Apollo caught up to me and grasped my elbow. So, change your mind yet? He quizzed in a hushed whisper. Why would I possibly have changed my mind? Well, don't pretend like the two of you weren't being all buddy-buddy in math. I saw you two smiling and having a good time. I may have been smiling, but I seriously doubt either of us were having a good time. Nah, Apollo said. I know my sister, and I know how she looks when she's having fun. She was definitely enjoying your conversation. Why are you so concerned with me being her oracle or whatever? I pressed. To be honest, it's a little creepy. I'm the son of Zeus. Of course I'm a bit of a creep. Also, I told you why. My sister needs more interaction than with just me, and I think you'd make a good friend for her. Don't you think you should, I don't know, pick a girl? It's going to be hard for her to be friends with a man if she hates them. What gave you the idea that she hates men? He asked in confusion. She has pretty much stated that she hates men, you being the exception, obviously. What are you two whispering about? She demanded behind us. Nothing that concerns you, Apollo answered with a wink. Oh, that reminds me, Will. Do you have a Facebook or anything? I'm trying to get Artemis into more online stuff. I got her a Twitter, but all she really posts are pictures of cute animals. Apollo, I'm sure he has no interest in that sort of stuff, Artemis tried, shoving her brother forward. Her cheeks were a rosy pink in embarrassment. I wasn't asking you, he argued. Will? Yeah, I have a Facebook. Awesome, we'll have to add you. Also, follow us on Twitter. Can I ask you both a question? Why is it that for gods you two don't seem very, well, godly? What's that supposed to mean? Artemis growled. Do you seriously doubt that we're gods? Apollo wrapped his arms around her arm to hold her back. Whoa, easy, sister. I think what he means to say is we're not what he expected from gods. I imagine his view of us is a bit more grand than we actually are. I'm just saying that I haven't seen you guys do anything out of the realm of physical possibility, other than transforming from an 8-year-old to an 18-year-old in front of your eyes. Okay, so you can change how you look. Lots of people can do archery, though, so I'm not certain how that's a godly power. Sorry if that's offensive, I'm just a little confused. Ah, I understand, Apollo beamed. You kind of assumed we'd be all smite the puny mortals, burning humans like ants under a magnifying glass sort of gods. Well, that's not exactly how I'd have worded it, but yeah, something like that. Artemis looked at her brother with a grin. Can I show him, please? She pleaded excitedly. You know the rules, sister. Can't use your powers in front of humans except for in emergencies. Or if they're your oracle. She visibly sank. You're no fun. That's my line, Apollo laughed. Sorry, Will. You'll just have to take it on faith that we are, in fact, gods. Suddenly, one of the overhead PAs let out a high-pitched whine before calling out in a flat tone of voice. William Ambrosia, please report to the principal's office. William Ambrosia, please report to the principal's office. Thank you. As the message ended, the two gods looked to me quizzically. I just shrugged my shoulders. I had no idea why I was being called in. Either way, it wasn't as if I had much choice. Well, sorry guys, looks like you're on your own for now. The room's just at the top of the staircase and to the left. Thanks, Artemis replied. It wasn't until I was halfway to the principal's office that I realized what she had said to me. Chapter 3. Give me a moment to take a drink. When I reached the office, it occurred to me that I'd never actually been inside before. Even if I did look like trouble, I didn't often cause it. Truthfully, I mostly just liked to keep my head down. Opening the door, my eyes fell on two young women who were working at the counter. One was busy filing away official-looking papers while the other one sat casually painting her fingernails. Neither of them looked much older than me, young 20s at the oldest, and upon seeing me, the fingernails one smiled. Hey there, cutie, can we help you? She finished her question by pursing her lips to blow her nails dry. Her companion gave her a stern look. Iris, not appropriate. Do you have any business in the office? Yes, I'm Will Ambrosia, I explained. I was paged. Ambrosia, hmm? Did you know that your last name refers to food for the gods? I must admit, you do look rather scrumptious, Iris cooed. Iris, not appropriate. Her friend let out a sigh. I'm really sorry about her. Well, you can go on in. I'll let the principal know you're here. It's the third door on the right. Thank you. When I reached the door, I knocked politely. Come in, a voice called through the door. As I entered, I could feel the tension in the room. The woman's presence was so thick I could choke on it. Please, have a seat, William, the principal requested. She was an older woman, in her 40s, but she was one of those who, despite her older age and slightly wrinkled features, would still be considered attractive. She had light brown hair pulled into a bun. Even still, her hair was rather short, giving her a style that made it seem as if her bun had not been tied up so much as it had bloomed from her head. Her eyes scanned me up and down. It seemed I wasn't the only one doing an analysis on appearances. Now, do you know why you are here? No, ma'am, I responded as politely as I could. Am I in some sort of trouble? No, no, I'm sorry. You must have thought this was about some sort of punishment. She gave me a smile coupled with a cheerful laugh. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to cause you such a scare. I immediately let out the breath I'd been holding in. So I wasn't in trouble. Despite that, the tension in the room didn't fade at all. Something about this woman intimidated me. Couldn't quite put my finger on it, but it was there. Why did you call me here? I merely wished to know how you're getting along in your classes. Ma'am, your schooling. How have you been doing in your classes? I'm doing well, I guess. This was so bizarre. There was definitely more to this. There had to be. With all due respect, ma'am, did you really call me down here just to ask about my grades? You could have just checked my records, right? You caught me, she chuckled, moving around to sit on the front of her desk, one leg crossed over the other gracefully as she stared at me. As I took in all of her, she reached up to pull out her bun. Shaking her hair out, the sandy brown locks flowed to just above her shoulders in waves that gave her an air of refinement. She paused for a moment, placing her hands in her lap. Looking deep into my eyes, she flashed me a coy grin that only increased my suspicion. How are you, William? Do you need something to drink? I could see the gears turning in her head, and I could feel her judging my every move with unwavering scrutiny. It's just Will, ma'am, I corrected, not William. And I'm fine, but thank you. But it's such a nice name that your mother gave you. Why do you insist on shortening it? I shifted uncomfortably in my seat. This was definitely getting weird. It felt like she was flirting with me. Why did older women seem to suddenly have an interest in me? William just feels too formal for me, I guess, I explained. Well, what's the problem with being formal? It's formal to get dressed for school, but I assume you elected to wear clean underpants today. Ma'am, I'm gonna be late for class, I tried, moving to excuse myself. I don't know what this woman was planning to do to me, but I wanted no part about it. I wanted no part of it. Talking to me about my undergarments was where I drew the line. Just as I had opened the door, it flew from my hands to slam shut. That was very rude of you, William. The tone she'd had quickly lost its friendliness. One doesn't just leave in the middle of a conversation. Was she a monster, then? That was the only explanation I had for how she slammed the door shut on me. What do you want with me? I demanded, balling my fists tightly. My eyes scanned the room, trying to find something I could use to defend myself. The only thing that I could spot was a shiny golden letter opener, with a stylized pattern of a peacock's tail feather, which the principal now twiddled between her perfectly trimmed fingers. There are a pair of twins who recently transferred into this school. They've been placed in all of your classes and have lockers beside yours. I want you to observe them and report to me any suspicious behaviors they may exhibit. So she was after Artemis and Apollo. You're asking me to spy on them, ma'am? Isn't that a little unethical? I bit my tongue to stop myself from blurting out what I knew. If she thought I was an ignorant kid, it would make things much simpler. Spy is such an ugly word. I want you to simply let me know what it is they're up to, who they're talking to, what they're doing, things like that. Ma'am, I haven't noticed any twins. If they are in my classes, that doesn't necessarily mean they'll talk to me. Do not lie to me, William. She jabbed the letter opener point down hard enough that it embedded almost half an inch into her desk. Fire was burning in her eyes as she loomed over me. I get angry when I am lied to, and trust me, that is the last thing you want. Now I'll ask you one more time. What do you know about the twins? I don't know the twins, I repeated. Whatever this woman was, I had the feeling that this was the she that Artemis and Apollo had referred to. I couldn't tell this monster that they were on to her. In a blur, she lashed out with her hand to rake my skin. I flinched, only for her long fingernails to stop just before my cheek. My heart was pounding in my chest. I had been certain she was going to tear an eye out. Instead, she gently took my chin in her hand, tilting it upward so she could examine me. You really are a handsome young man, she hummed, seemingly calmed from her fury. Your mother must be so proud. I pulled away from her grasp. Please don't mention my mother. Monster or not, my mother was a touchy subject. Why, do you resent your mother? Surely you're not so ungrateful to the woman who carried you and gave birth to you. Your rudeness conflicts heavily with your looks. I'm certain she raised you better than this, William. Being born is the only thing my mother's done for me. Now, if you don't have anything else you want to talk about, and I'm not in trouble, I'd like to leave. I went to stand, but she easily placed the toe of her high heel on my shoulder, forcing me back into the seat. Oh, there are volumes of topics I wish to discuss with you, William. I'm afraid you'll be here for quite some time. All day, if necessary. I could play the waiting game. Having a teacher for a father gave me some insight into the rules. It was illegal for her to keep me here after a certain time. Fine with me. Keep me here all day, then. Once 6 o'clock rolls around, I'll just go home. Unless you'd like keeping me here after hours to show up on a report to the board. I'll even throw in the bit about coercing a student into spying on another for personal reasons. Mouthy, too. This time she noted my trait with far less admiration. Tell me, William, do you know who I am? A monster? I guessed. A look of shock came across her face as she held her hand to her chest in offense. Excuse me? Do I truly look like a monster to you, you wretched troglodyte? Looks can be deceiving. The last monster I met was attractive, too. She was taken aback by the praise, but with it her anger seemed to vanish almost instantly. I am not a monster, young man. I am a goddess, just like your two little friends. I am not just a goddess, either. I am the goddess. All who know my name either fear me or adore me. Now I'm going to make this very clear. You will observe Artemis and Apollo, and you will tell me what they are up to. Otherwise, life will become very difficult for you. Do I make myself clear? All color faded from my face as the pieces fell into place. The Queen of Gods, the peacock feather. Your Hera. My mouth felt dry as I stared into the woman's fierce violet eyes. Stories raced through my head of the goddess' wrath. Very good, she beamed. My gaze fell to a picture on her desk that showed her with a man who wore a toothy grin behind a big white beard. Then that man is... She picked up the portrait, examining it with a sigh before setting it back down. My lout of a husband, Zeus. Now, my stepdaughter and stepson don't just show up without a reason. If you know what it is they're up to, tell me now. Otherwise, you had better find out. Apollo's looking for an oracle for Artemis, I blurted. I felt awful for not protecting them, but at the same time, I was no match against a goddess. I also had no doubt that if the roles were reversed, Artemis would have no problems giving me up. Is that really what he told you? She laughed. Come now, William, you're much smarter than that. You don't truly think they found the Lamias at the museum by chance, did you? How do you know about the Lamias? Because I sent them, silly boy. Leaning forward, she playfully pressed her index finger on the tip of my nose. They were on a mission from me, and I am not too pleased that you aided in killing my servants. They attacked me first. I was just defending myself. I went chasing after Artemis because I was escorting a field trip and she happened to sneak in with the rest of the class. I thought she was one of my dad's elementary students. Hera frowned. It seemed that was not something she had been aware of. I deeply apologize if you were hurt in their exuberance. Their task was not to hurt anyone, I assure you. They were meant to retrieve an artifact. Because of your intervention, they failed. I don't know what you're talking about. And it's better that way. Mortals have no business sticking their noses in our affairs. That being said, you can be certain that I will be keeping my eyes on you, William. This is insane. Gods have been hidden from humans for millennia. How is it that I could possibly have stumbled onto all of this? Hera paused for a moment, placing a finger on her cheek in thought. A perplexing question indeed. I know this must be hard on you, William. I imagine our existence comes as quite a shock. If you need to talk about it, we may do so after you repay me for your meddling, as unintentional as it may have been. Now here's what's going to happen. You're going to sneak into the museum, find the statue of Eris, and steal the apple before bringing it back to me. Eris? I repeated back. Closing my eyes, I recalled the lithe figure holding the golden fruit in her outstretched hands. You want me to steal the golden apple from the museum? If I get caught, I'll be serving jail time, maybe even prison. Then I suggest you don't get caught. Her lips curled into a smug grin before she gave me a condescending pat on the head. Rising from her desk, she smartly straightened her light pink blazer. Walking to the door, she held it open for me. You are excused, William. That will be all. Grateful for the out, I stood to leave quickly, but just before I exited, her arm flew out, blocking my path. Oh, and one more thing. You are to leave those pesky twins out of this. It will be our little secret. It's a bit late for that, a feminine voice smugly commented through the PA speaker on her desk. Artemis, how are you, my dear? It's been such a long time. Hera's tone dripped with sarcasm. I do so hope you haven't done something as foolish as to attack my handmaidens. I'd hate to have to punish you for breaking our divine laws. Not to worry, Artemis replied. They seem tired from having to work for a stuck-up bitch, so we urged them to take a nap. In a burst of anger, Hera stormed out to the front of the office. Sorry. Not wishing to remain behind, I followed closely behind her. Despite how much the huntress threatened my life, I felt much safer beside Artemis than I did with Hera. When we emerged, the huntress sat on the edge of the desk just as Hera had. Her fingers still rested on the intercom. She wore a smug grin on her lips that taunted the principal. Both of the ladies I'd encountered earlier were fast asleep in their seats, with headphones on their heads. Apollo stood behind them, his arms crossed over his chest. He was not as thrilled about this as Artemis was. Very clever. Up to your old tricks again, Apollo. He said nothing, allowing Artemis to speak up. Shame on you, Hera, bullying mortals into doing your dirty work. To answer the question that must be burning your head, we've been listening the entire time. You're not getting your hands on that apple. Oh, and who's going to stop me, child? You? Do we truly need a repeat of the last time we encountered one another on the battlefield? Hera balled her hands up under her eyes and pretended to cry. Boo-hoo, Daddy, my wicked stepmother hit me with my quiver. Sparks flew between the two goddesses as Artemis stared her down. If the two came to blows, I didn't know who to support, or if I should even stick around at all. That was over 3,000 years ago. Things have changed a lot since then. Some things never change. Regardless, you know even you cannot shield a mortal from my wrath, Hera commented. Listen here, you witch, Artemis snapped back. The law states you're not allowed to kill a mortal save in self-defense. you so much as lay a finger on him, I'll... You'll what, Artemis? Hera smirked. Going to try to put an arrow in me? I think we both know that your father would not approve. Besides, I'd never attack sweet, innocent William. She wrapped an arm around me, pulling me closer to her. As she held me to her chest, her free hand worked to style my hair. I went rigid, silently pleading Artemis for help. I felt as if a bank robber had just put me in a headlock and jabbed a gun to my temple. If that's the case, then he has no reason to help you, the huntress pointed out. I have access to all of his grades, his permanent record, and his transcripts. There's more than one way to influence a mortal, Artemis. Apollo elected to remain silent. Why wasn't he saying anything to her? Maybe like me, he realized that it was wisest not to get between the two. The apple is too dangerous for you to have, Hera. I don't have to remind you what happened the last time, Artemis said. That is why I'm sending William after it. He will ensure that such an event does not repeat itself. The apple is safe where it is. It'll be safer with me. What's more suited to protect it, the queen of the gods, or an urchin and her thug of a brother? Apollo suddenly spoke up. We give it to her. Apollo, have you taken leave of your senses? She's right, Artemis. We were lucky that you spotted the Lamias when they entered the museum. If you hadn't, they could have easily taken the apple. So we station a guard then. How will we do that without drawing attention? If we place a god, or even a monster, there for any extended amount of time, someone is going to take notice, and that will put it in more danger than it would by giving it to Hera. Will can get the apple and deliver it. If someone else is watching the apple, they'll think he's just some stupid thief who doesn't know what he has. No offense, Will. None taken, I grumbled. It was obvious that Artemis was still conflicted with the idea. But Hera is more trustworthy than some others, Apollo finished. Wouldn't you agree? Besides, when we do give her the apple, we'll mention to Father where it's located, and we'll be free of that responsibility for good. Hera tossed her hair over her shoulder with a scoff. Well, I'm glad one of you has a good head on their shoulders. Then it's settled. William will fetch the apple and bring it to me. Well, I'm going with him, Artemis announced, causing both gods to look at her in shock. Even I was stunned by her sudden declaration. If what you say is true and the apple isn't safe, I'm not going to send Will on his own to get it. I'm going with him to protect him. And if you don't agree to that, then I'll put an arrow in his leg and you'll have to find yourself another mortal. I didn't know whether to be appreciative of Artemis' concern for me or fearful because of the seriousness of her threat. Hera stared her down for a moment before releasing me and taking a step back. I leave the decision up to William. If he wants to take you, then I see no problems with it. All eyes turned on me, causing my blood to freeze in my veins. Well, Artemis asked sternly, her eyes narrowing, aren't I coming with you, Will? I'm, not sure, I murmured, trying to remain neutral. You're not sure? What do you mean you're not sure? Apollo placed his hands on his twin's shoulders, trying to calm her down. Relax, Artemis. This is all new to Will. Give him time to process it. There's no need to jump down his throat. You're the one that keeps pushing him to become an oracle. I didn't want him involved from the beginning. Well, maybe if you spent more time with him, he'd be more open to taking you with him. You should try asking him. Apollo pushed her playfully towards me. She growled softly at her brother before timidly approaching me. Her cheeks glowed a bright red as she stared at her feet. Fine. Well, do you want to, I don't know, spend time with me? Now I was the one blushing. Like a date? I asked, confused. The next thing I knew, I was flat on my back with a terrible pain in my jaw from where her right hook had made impact. She went rigid as she realized what she'd done before attempting to help me up. I quickly raised my hand to stop her, scrambling away from the violent goddess so I could get back to my feet. Hera clapped slowly and sarcastically. Way to go, Artemis. I think he really trusts you now. I hated that Hera was using me to twist the knife in Artemis like this, but at the same time, she was right. Both of the women were as likely to stab me in the back as the other. How about we give Will the night to sleep on it, Apollo suggested. There's nothing wrong with waiting a day. If need be, I'll keep an eye on the museum for tonight. Will can give us his answer in the morning. Yeah, okay. Artemis sounded as if I'd really hurt her. Did it really bother her that much that she made me nervous? The rest of our classes went by silently. Every now and again, I'd catch a look from Artemis before she averted her eyes. When the bell rang to signal the end of the day, both of us gave a sigh of relief. I couldn't believe I was going to go through with a museum robbery. I didn't really have much of a choice anyway. Thankfully, there wasn't much in the way of security other than some CCTV cameras. The last thing I wanted was to be on the wrong end of a security guard's gun. Once I'd gathered my things, I returned to the class I'd missed to gather my homework before leaving. As I walked outside, a horn honked nearby to get my attention. When I turned, I saw Apollo waving at me from the back of a red convertible, a girl in each arm. I politely returned his wave as the group sped off, but when I looked back, I saw Artemis standing alone on the corner across the street. She hadn't noticed me yet. She'd been too focused on her brother. Without a word, she turned to walk off, but it wasn't just a normal stroll. It was a somber saunter that made me feel for her. Did she really not have any friends? I found it hard to believe, even with all of her death threats. I hated seeing anyone like this, and with a cute girl like Artemis, it just made it that much harder to bear. After a moment of hesitation, I steeled myself and crossed the street. She'd stuck up for me to Hera. The least I could do was keep her company on the way home. Would you like someone to walk with you? I offered, causing her to jerk away in surprise. Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. You didn't scare me. She gave an impatient huff and walked even faster. I, in turn, picked up my pace as well, trying to fall into step. What are you doing? Following you, I replied. I thought you might like some company. You thought wrong. I thought you wanted to get to know each other. Get your head out of your ass. I only said that to get hair off my back. So you don't want to spend time together. She came to a halt, turning on me with anger in her eyes. Listen very carefully, Will. I have no interest in getting to know you. I don't really care. I don't want to spend time with you. I don't want to see you. I don't even want to hear about you. I'm sorry if in your twisted mind you have some sick delusional fantasy that I'm crushing on you, but it is not going to happen. Period. With that, she turned away again, whipping me in the face with her long hair. I was getting really sick of her attitude. Maybe it was the fact she didn't have her arrows with her, but something inside of me snapped. Instead of doing the smart thing of cutting my losses, I decided I would confront her. Hey, why would you say something like that? Because I can say whatever I want, Will, she replied. Sorry, I'm not going to be an obedient little pet for you. That was when I finally lost all of my patience. There was fire in my veins as I snapped at her. Stop saying things like that! When she was shocked into silence, I took the opportunity to vent my anger. You want to know why I couldn't immediately agree to take you with me? This right here is the reason. I don't know who hurt you or why, but you cannot just label me as an obsessed player and move on. All day today, you've been treating me like I'm some sort of creep when you don't even know me. You want to insult me? Maybe you should actually know the person you're insulting before running your mouth off about someone you know nothing about. You better watch your tone quickly, Will, or I'll watch it for you. She was pissed now, but I had become consumed by some false bravado and ceased to care. Go ahead, I challenged. Do it. Punch me, kick me, shoot me. I don't care anymore, Artemis. It's obvious you don't care about anyone but yourself, so why on earth would anyone else care? You know, I actually feel bad for Apollo. It's obvious he has his work cut out for him. I clenched my fist and turned to storm away from her, but she quickly chased after me. Hey, what did you mean by that? You know exactly what I meant. No, I don't, she protested, grabbing my arm to stop me. However, this wasn't a rough wrench of my wrist. She embraced my arm in a desperate gesture. What did you mean by Apollo has his work cut out for him? I looked at her, and the moment I laid eyes on her expression, my anger faded. Do you know why Apollo wants you to have an oracle so badly? He wants me to have a representative in the mortal world? No, Artemis, he doesn't want you to be alone. He wants you to have a friend. That's why he wants someone to be your oracle. Why he chose me, I'll never understand, but he's worried because you don't have any friends. Pain crept onto her face. She was unable to hide that her heart was broken. I have friends, she murmured softly. I mean, I have you, right? I scoffed. Me? Artemis, you hate me. I never said that I hated you. You say it with the way you treat me. When you say things like, I don't care how you feel, do you think I find it friendly? There was a long pause between us. I don't get out often, she finally said, avoiding my gaze. It's not an excuse, just an explanation. Talking to people has always been hard for me. Paula's the one people typically like more. Do you want me to be your friend, Artemis? No, I want to be your friend. That's the same thing. She shook her head. If I'm your friend, that means you call me your friend. If you're my friend, then it's only because I say so. You didn't actually choose to be friends. You're already my friend. I want to be your friend back. It was agonizing hearing her talk like this. I wanted to hug her to comfort her, but I knew if I did, she'd probably headbutt me, call me a jerk, and run off. A smile crept to my lips, and I knew exactly what to say. Fair enough. I'll make you a deal. If you want to be my friend, you can start by letting me walk you home. Oh, but... She began ready to protest. But what? What's wrong with me walking you home? I can protect myself. You're not escorting me home. You're just walking beside me, right? Is that what you've been so hung up on? It's semantics. I'm walking with you to keep you company. That's it. You swear. Artemis, if we were to get into trouble, I'd be relying on you to protect me, remember? So this isn't some sort of ploy to seduce me, right? Would it even work if it was? I asked with a smile. She gave a light chuckle. Fair enough, well. Very well. I will allow you to keep me company on my way home. I live near the museum. As she turned to leave, I couldn't help but feel relieved that we were finally getting along. Chapter 4. As the sun began to set, it bathed the sky in breathtaking oranges and pinks. My attention, however, was on the goddess beside me. I eagerly asked her questions about her life, curious about every aspect of it. It isn't every day you meet a goddess, after all. So, explain to me what happened between you and Hera. The two of you obviously have some animosity because of your dad, but I felt a bit more personal than that. Pass. As much as I wanted to know more, I decided it would be best if I picked my battles. Okay, other than the Lamia, what are some other monsters you've fought? Ooh, okay, so let's see. My hardest kill, I think, was the Nemean lion. It was a gigantic cat, easily the size of one of your SUVs. Its hide was so tough, blades and arrows couldn't pierce it. Wow, how did you beat it? Bludgeon it to death? Very good, she beamed at me. That was the plan, anyway. It ended up crushing Heracles' club in its mouth, so we resorted to plan B. I shot out both of its eyes, and grabbing the lion by its mighty jaws, Heracles held its maw open so I could shoot through the soft flesh in the roof of his mouth and into its brain. That was really clever. I doubt I could have thought of that. Thanks. The hardest part was skinning the stupid thing. We had to use one of its own claws to do it, but it was worth it. She accented her statement by tapping her chest to reveal she was still wearing her leather armor beneath her uniform. Don't tell Hera, though. She still thinks Heracles did it all by himself. So that's the hide. After all these years, it only gets stronger with age. I could tell by her smirk that she was enjoying this, maybe even as much as I was. It was amazing to see how quickly her switch had flipped. She hadn't even threatened to kill me once our entire walk home. Soon the two of us stood at the museum's entrance, staring up at the dark windows. The cheer I'd felt slowly faded away. I wasn't thrilled about this entire mission. On a serious note, what's with this apple anyway? Why does Hera want it so badly? Artemis hesitated for a moment. Well, I'm going to ask you a question. You have to promise me to not be offended, and swear upon the river Styx that you will not lie to me when you answer it. Noting my confused expression, she explained, An oath on the river Styx is unable to be broken, even by gods. So you must make this oath to me before I can ask you. Okay, I swear upon the river Styx that I will not lie to you when you ask me the question. I will also do my best to not be offended by it. Can I trust you? Almost immediately I replied, Yes, of course you can. I'm amazed at how quickly you answered that. Hi, Momo. You must genuinely believe that in the deepest part of your heart. That, or you're just that serpent-tongued. I held up my hand as if testifying in court. I swear, Artemis, that you can trust me. I know I blabbed to Hera about Apollo wanting to find you. Okay, come on, mouse. Momo, quit. She's moving my mouse so I can't scroll down. I swear, Artemis, that you can trust me. I know I blabbed to Hera about Apollo wanting to find you a friend, but I promise, any secrets you tell me are safe. She seemed hesitant at first, but after a brief pause she nodded. Very well. The apple is also known as the Golden Apple of Discord. It was created by Eris, the goddess of chaos. As its name implies, the thing is made of solid gold, and on its side it reads T. Callisti, meaning to the fairest. So what's Hera going to do with it? Use it as a paperweight? Why is this thing such a big deal? The gods were having a party of some sort. I wasn't there personally. I always hated the extravagant parties my family threw. But Eris wasn't invited, so she burst in, and before anyone could say a word, she threw the apple onto the table where everyone was gathered. Immediately, three goddesses reached for the apple. Hera was one, Aphrodite was another, and Athena the last. Each of them argued that they were the fairest, and finally they all turned to Zeus for confirmation. Sounds rough. From the few gods I've met, I'd hate to be caught in the middle of that fight. What's that supposed to mean? You can all kill me with a wave of your hand. I don't want to be stuck between a rock and a hard place when the rock and hard place can topple over on me at any second. I caused Artemis to giggle, and I had to admit I liked the sound of her laugh. Now that I'd gotten past her rough attitude, I would even consider her to be girlfriend material. I quickly banished that line of thought from my head. I didn't know where it had come from, but I knew it would only lead me to trouble. Well, you have good judgment. My father knew better than to get involved when they brought the issue to him. He put the task up to a mortal by the name of Paris, who was renowned for being an honest man. All three goddesses went before him, and all three offered him many things to try to win his favor. Hera even offered to sleep with him. In the end, he chose Aphrodite, who swore that he would get the most beautiful woman ever created to be his wife. So she gave him another man's wife, Helen of Troy. This apple caused the Trojan War. Artemis nodded sadly. It was a horrible war. My brother Apollo and I supported Troy. Needless to say, we lost. Afterwards, the three goddesses who were involved made a pact to lock the apple away in a magical casing, and it was put on the statue so as to hide it. Or so the story goes, anyway. So then how did you and Apollo find out about it? If it was a secret that was meant to be hidden from everyone, you two knowing about it is a rather large oversight, isn't it? Artemis smiled knowingly. I was on Hephaestus Island when he made the casing. He hates Hera even more than I do, so he wouldn't stop venting to me the entire time he made it. Then I told Apollo. We check in on the apple every now and then, and this time I just happened to spot the lamia. It isn't the first time Hera's tried to steal the apple, mind you, and I've no idea what she wants with it. If my brother thinks we can trust her with it, though, then I believe him. You sure do have a lot of loyalty to him. You're an only child, right, Will? Yeah. Well, having a twin is like having a biological best friend. It goes past being brother and sister, in a sense. We're two halves of a whole, and we've both made sacrifices for each other time and again. It must be nice having someone who's that close. Admittedly, Artemis, we're very alike. I'm afraid I don't have much in the way of friends either. I scratched the back of my head. It's just never really seemed important, I guess. It's not that I've tried and can't, just that I've never really cared to. Her expression sank. Realizing what I'd said, I quickly backpedaled. That came out wrong. I care about being friends with you, Artemis. In fact, I do want you to come with me on the mission. Wait, really? She asked, her eyes shining brightly. She was so excited at the prospect. I'd never seen her so happy before, save when she was sniping lamias left and right. I think I misjudged you, Artemis. I would definitely call you my friend. Besides, you saved my life on 3 occasions in as many days. I owe you one. Maybe someday I'll even agree to be your oracle. The smile I gave her was not one she returned. Instead, she quickly excused herself. Well, I should get back to my cabin. Dinner isn't going to catch itself. The huntress nervously shifted from one foot to the other. I could tell she was almost expecting me to make some sort of unwelcome advance, but I'd meant what I said before. Sure thing. I should probably be getting home myself. Sleep well, Artemis. I managed to get halfway up the street before she called after me. When I turned to look back at her, she flashed me a smile. Thanks for walking me home. You're welcome, I beamed, waving farewell to her. I'll see you tomorrow. Right. See you tomorrow. With that, she disappeared into the tree line, leaving me to make my own way home. As I came in through the door, it finally hit me just how exhausted I was from the day. It was hard to believe that I woke up this morning completely in shock by the existence of gods. Now it all felt so normal. What had really changed between last week and today, anyway? The world still spun as it always had. Getting to my room, I opened the door, ready to take a nap, only to find Apollo sitting on my bed with a grin. Hey, buddy, how'd it go? His presence nearly made me jump out of my shoes. Apollo, you have to stop doing this. It is not okay. You can't keep breaking into my house. I'm a concerned brother. I think that trumps a little B&E, don't you? No, come on, tell me how it went. A little birdie told me you were walking home with Artemis. If answering your question will get you out of my house, it went fine. Artemis and I talked a bit. She told me about the apple's history, and we parted ways as friends. So? So I'll take her with me when I go to steal the apple. And? And what? Are you going to be her oracle? I'm not going to answer that until I know all that entails. What would I do as her oracle? You're going to be her toady, basically. Think of it like a hype man. She'll tell you, hey, I need to talk to this guy. You'll go find that guy, make sure the coast is clear, then tell him she's coming and to make preparations for her. Then you'll return and escort her there. Simple as that. So I'd be her servant. No, 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 absolutely not, Apollo assured me, putting an arm around my shoulders. The bond between an oracle and their god is much closer than that. My oracle is practically like a daughter to me. Well, she was, anyway. Was? I asked suspiciously. Not important. All you need to know is that you'll be getting to spend a lot more time with my sister, and you two will become much closer. You have to admit, once you get to know her, she's pretty cool, right? Yeah, I suppose that's true. Even still, I'd like to talk to Artemis about this. Maybe once this whole Apple business is done. It's her decision too, after all. Fair enough, fair enough. Don't wait too long on it, though, okay? I'd suck for one of the other candidates to come in and snatch it from under you. Other candidates? Oh, you didn't know? There's at least 3 other guys lined up to be her oracle. Once one of you agrees, that's it. We take your memories of the gods and poof, we're gone. Never to be seen again. You don't want that to happen, now do you? That'd really suck, especially since Artemis and I are finally starting to become friends. Yeah, I know, it's a shame, but the rules are there for a reason. We can't go against the code. To be honest, I think she likes you the best. I won't rush you or anything, but you probably shouldn't drag your feet either. I understand. Thanks, Apollo. See you at school tomorrow? I'll be there. He nodded, before again clambering out of my window. And seriously, stop breaking into my house. No promises. With a sigh, I crashed onto my bed, resting my head on my pillow and staring up at the ceiling. My jaw still stung a bit. Like a date? Man, I'm an idiot. The next morning, I awoke to the sound of laughter in my house. Not that my home life wasn't a happy one, but more that the laugh felt out of place. I crept down the stairs to find Artemis sitting across the table with my dad. When she saw me, she flashed a polite smile before sipping her coffee. Good morning, son. Sorry if we woke you. Your friend and I were just chatting about some of the things you used to do when you were a kid. What did you say your name was again, sweetheart? I saw her brow furrow in irritation, and before she could protest, I quickly interjected. Artemis doesn't like to be called sweetheart, Dad. It's a bit of a pet peeve. My father quickly recovered. I'm so sorry, Artemis. I didn't mean to offend you. I was raised in the South, you see. Everyone's either honey, sugar, or sweetheart down there. It's quite all right. I'm afraid I only recently came to America, so I'm still getting adjusted to some of the cultural differences. Well, with a name like Artemis, I'd be willing to bet you're Greek. You're a fan of Greek mythology? You could say I've devoted my life to it. You don't spend 6 years in university to not learn your major. I don't mean to be rude, I interrupted, but what are you doing here, Artemis? I wanted to walk you to school. I thought we could talk some more like we did yesterday afternoon. She gave me the biggest smile I'd ever seen her make, and it was then I realized that it seemed too cheerful. She was up to something. You came to my house 2 hours early for school? I mean, I don't mind walking with you, it's just surprising is all. Let me just shower and change real quick, and I'll be right back down. When I stood beneath the hot water, my mind struggled to identify what she was planning. It was far quicker than I'd expected for her to warm up to me. Then again, maybe she was simply here because she'd grown to like me that much. My thoughts began to run wild with possibilities of a strange platonic romance between the two of us. We would be friends, closer than any other friends could be, and yet she'd remain chaste and pure. Never would she fall in love with any man or woman, but I would still be closer to her than any other. I could almost imagine her giving a wave of her hand to indicate that I was to chase off another would-be suitor. I ejected the thoughts into the steam. Don't be weird, Will. You'll do something stupid and blow this otherwise. Slapping my cheeks, I stepped out of the shower and toweled off. When I came back down, Dad had 2 toaster pastries ready to go, wrapped in a napkin. As I took them, he gripped my shoulder firmly and leaned closer to me to whisper in my ear. Treat this one well, son. I like her. You have my blessing. It's not like that, Dad, I quickly stammered back before slipping out the door with Artemis. I'll be home late, okay? The moment the door closed behind me, Artemis let out a frustrated groan. Ugh, my cheeks are killing me from smiling that much. How does anyone do that for so long? I chuckled. They say it takes more muscles to frown than it does to smile, I reminded her. The gaze she gave me was one of impatience, but unlike yesterday morning, there was no anger behind it. I guess I like giving my cheeks a workout. Anyway, sorry about intruding on your home life, Will, but I had to meet you quickly before we got to the school. Why? Because, Will, today is the day that you're going to become a man instead of a boy. Her words made me swallow nervously. I didn't like the sound of that. Should I be concerned? This isn't going to be some sort of trial by fire or something, is it? Sort of, she grinned impishly. I really didn't like the sound of that. Oh, loosen up, Will. You'll be perfectly safe, I promise. But, but, shouldn't we be getting to school? When it came to a trial, somehow I doubted that it would be within my realm of possibility, much less safe. Nope, we're playing hooky today. But my grades. But your life! She grabbed my wrist tightly and dragged me down the sidewalk. My editor must have missed that one. Artemis was incredibly excited to send me through the paces. Trust me, you'll thank me for this later. You may not like it today, maybe not even tomorrow, but someday, I swear, you'll thank me. It seemed obvious that no amount of arguing would persuade her to drop this trial. If she honestly meant it when she said it could mean my life, then I had to accept it and just power through. She dragged me through an older part of town, turning here and there until she came to a dilapidated building. Ta-da! She beamed, holding out her hands towards the tinted door. Artemis, where are we? We're here to introduce you to some of the family. Immediately I recoiled from the door. I didn't know who she meant by family, but knowing Greek mythology, opening that door was about as safe as a game of Russian roulette. That's really not necessary. Oh, yes, it is. Putting her shoulder against my back, she began pushing me towards the door. I really don't want to do this, Artemis. Don't be such a baby. Artemis, no, I'm not comfortable with this. I still need time to process this whole gods thing. You, Hera, and Apollo are semi-normal. I'm not ready to meet even more crazy, all-powerful beings. Artemis groaned, letting me go. When I turned towards her, though, she placed her hands on my cheeks and stared deep into my eyes. Well, I swear to you on the river Styx, as long as I'm here with you, you're going to be safe. The person inside loves mortals. Do you trust me? My heart was racing fiercely in my chest. Her words seemed to flow through my head like honey. They were so melodious that I simply nodded in a daze. Good, then let's get inside, she cheered, letting go of me and opening the door for me. As I came out of the trance, I cast another nervous glance at the door. Had Artemis just used her powers on me? No, I doubted that she would do something like that. Besides, she made the unbreakable oath, and that meant I should trust her. Finally, I swallowed my fear and stepped inside. A small bell tinkled above the doorway, signaling we'd arrived. Shoes, Artemis instructed, slipping off her own boots. She spent a lot of time in the Orient, so she's super finicky about shoes on the mats. Sure enough, as my eyes adjusted to the dim light, I found myself in a traditional-looking dojo. The takama mats on the floor were well taken care of, and the walls were covered floor to ceiling in miscellaneous weapons and armor. The only area on the walls that didn't seem to have a piece of steel attached to it held, instead, a signed poster of Walker, Texas Ranger. Chuck Norris? Yeah, he's a big fan of hers, Artemis explained. Focus up. We're here to teach you how to fight. But I know how to fight, I reminded her, before adding a reluctant, sort of. I'll admit, your little knife thrust worked well against one lamia. However, I'd love to see you try that with a sphinx or a cockatrice. I'm sure you would not get very far. Is someone here? A calm feminine voice called from the back. The huntress beamed, shouting back to her, Hey sis, I brought some fresh meat. Artemis' choice of phrasing did little to comfort my nerves. I braced myself for some sort of horribly muscle-bound woman to come out, her veins throbbing and eager to tear me apart. Instead, the woman that emerged was tall and slender. She was very elegant, dressed in a snug gi that revealed that she, like Artemis, also was one that had been gifted with a divine figure. Her long brown hair was pleated back, and the grace with which she moved could put dancers to shame. Oh, hello, Artemis. Who is this? This is Will. I'm his friend. The way Artemis bragged about being my friend caused me to blush. Was this how she intended to introduce me to every god and goddess from here on out? It is a pleasure to meet you, Will, the woman greeted, giving a polite bow of her head. If Artemis has brought you here, you must be someone special indeed. It is nice to see a smile on her face again, if I may say so. Now we were both embarrassed. I awkwardly stammered out. Oh, I don't know about all that. I'm not really anything special, just a friend. Momo. Momo. I understand you like playing with the plastic bag, but you're messing up the audio. Could you not? Please stop. Ow, 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 ow. Why are you biting me? Look, okay. There's the camera. Do you want to say hi? No? Okay. You gotta let go of my shirt. So I'll put you down. There you go. Hey. Chill. Oh, I don't know about all that. I'm not really anything special, just a friend. You'll have to forgive me, but your name is. She smiled, taking my hand in both of hers and giving it a gentle shake. I am Athena, she introduced, before her grip suddenly tightened on my wrist. With a sweep of her leg, I found myself on the floor, my wrist painfully twisted to restrict my movement. Your first lesson is to never let your guard down. That one's free. She giggled, letting go of my hand and turning to Artemis. He seems nice, Artemis. I like him. Yes, Artemis cheered. So you'll train him? Sitting up, I began tenderly stroking my sore wrist. Wait. I'm gonna be training with the goddess of war? Battle, both women corrected me simultaneously. I'm sorry? It's a stupid disagreement. Our brother Ares likes to be the god of war, and he was always complaining because I had more worshippers than he did. So, to appease him, I'm no longer a goddess of war, but the goddess of battle, so that he can be comforted that we are not in the same role, and thus not competing for worshippers. Not that such matters anymore, but the title has stuck. Okay, so I'm going to be training with the goddess of battle, I corrected. Not quite. I'll be coaching you. I'm afraid I can be a bit competitive in the ring, and I'd hate to accidentally hurt you. Artemis stared me down. This is typically when the man says something like, "Yeah, right. I'm tougher than I look, isn't it? I'd advise against it, though, unless you want to leave with a limp. I'm not nearly as dumb as you take me for. But I don't understand. If you're not going to be sparring with me, Athena, then who?" I looked to Artemis, who shook her head with a smirk. "Not me. Her." A chill ran down my spine as the door opened behind me, the bell tinkling overhead again. "Right on time," Athena noted. "Well, I'd like for you to meet your sparring partner." "Oh, are we training someone new today?" When I turned around, a young girl in her preteens stood there, her hair tied up in flaxen pigtails and a cute grin on her face. The way she was dressed made her look like she was still in middle school. She wore a floral summer dress with leggings underneath it. Slipping off her shoes, she came to me and curtsied politely. "How do you do?" "You're very polite. I'm doing well. Thank you for asking." After Athena's initial impromptu lesson, I just bowed my head instead of offering my hand to shake. She looked at me for a moment, her smile taking on a somewhat sadistic gleam. "We'll see if that's really the case when I'm done." "Well, this is Nike, the goddess of victory," Athena introduced. "Nike? Like the shoe?" The entire room fell silent as the young girl's eyes flashed with anger. Did I say something wrong? "Those damn shoes," she cursed in her high voice. "Every time someone meets me, that's their first question. The shoes stole their name from me, but almost no one knows who I am. It really pisses me off." Snagging a practice sword off the wall, she threw it to me before drawing one for herself. "You've done it now, human. You've made me mad, and I'm going to show you what happens when you make fun of me." Alright, we're going to read one more chapter, and I think we're going to call it for tonight. Chapter 5. "What? I didn't make fun of you." I managed to catch the wooden sword just before she brought hers down overhead. As a knee-jerk reaction, I blocked it with my sword, but immediately regretted doing so. The force of her weapon on mine raced through my body. Had that blow made contact, I was certain it would have cracked my collarbone. For a girl with such a small stature, her strength was colossal. She came at me again, and I clumsily attempted to counter with a swing of my own. With minimal effort, the small goddess swept beneath my flailing to lash out with her blade to my chest. My ribs ached from her blow. Her offense was unrelenting, preventing me from gaining any ground whatsoever. "Wow, Nike seems to be really upset today. You must have caught her in one of her moods, Will," Athena noted. "Wonderful." I wheeled towards her just in time to deflect another attack away from me. She'd managed to back herself against a wall. "Momo." Holding my sword horizontally with one hand on the back of the blade, I attempted to pin her against it. If I managed to restrain her, my superior size would give me the advantage. Instead, however, she effortlessly ducked out of the way, slapping both of my shins in the process. "Come on, human, don't you have any fighting experience? Like at all?" "I thought you were going to at least put up a challenge, or struggle, put up a struggle." Jeez, that's what I get for trying to, anticipate the words. Her mockery stung, but not nearly as bad as the pain in my lower legs. Just a bit nervous about hitting a little girl." "What did you just call me?" Nike roared, as much as someone who sounds like they've sucked helium can roar anyway. "Oh no, we'll use the L word," Athena murmured to Artemis. "That's even worse than talking about the shoes." "I may be little, but I'm still tall enough to claw your eyes out." Her attacks came twice as fiercely now, and it took all of my effort just to parry them. As the clacking sound of wood on wood echoed through the dojo, Nike drove me around the room easily. For every 2 attacks I'd prevent, she'd hit me with at least one. "Hey, coach, I could really use some coaching right now." "Oh, right, sorry about that. You should try not to let her hit you." It was obvious she was enjoying the way Nike was pummeling me. "Gee, thanks," I grumbled before Nike leapt at least 4 feet into the air for another downward strike. I had no idea something so tiny could jump so high. As she came plummeting towards me, I saw a slight distortion in the air behind her in the fluorescent lighting. Wings! Nike had wings! That's how she was able to move the way she did. If I managed to ground her, she'd be more vulnerable to my attacks. "You should also try to hit her." I decided then that Athena's coaching skills couldn't possibly be in the same realm as her fighting abilities. "You're having a lot of fun with this, aren't you?" Artemis asked her sister. "It's been so long. Can you blame me?" I had to make a move. Staying on the defensive wasn't an option. Altering my grip, I planted my feet and swiveled my hips, striking against Nike's sword with enough power that it rattled my teeth. More importantly, though, it managed to bring her to a complete stop. Now that she was thrown off by the sudden change in momentum, I reached up, snagging onto her invisible wings just as she tried to jump away. She let out a loud yelp as I pulled her to the ground. I smirked, using a hold similar to the one Athena had used on me to keep the goddess pin. I figured out your trick, Nike. Looks like I win. Ow, ow, ow! Let go! They're sensitive! If I let go, are you going to keep attacking me? No, I'll stop, honest. Despite her pained whining, I could tell she was faking it. I had no doubt that the moment I let her go, she'd renew her assault again. Swear on the river Styx. Her head slowly turned to look at me in shock. How did you know about that? Just do it. Fine. I swear on the river Styx that I won't attack you when you let me go. As I released her wings, she stood, giving it a gentle stroke to smooth out her translucent feathers. I turned to Artemis with a proud smile. What do you think? I won my first spar. Not bad for a beginner, huh? Athena began to giggle, and even Artemis had to hide a snicker. I realized they were looking behind me at Nike. She was attacking? I wheeled about just as a painful crack echoed from her blow to my head. I fell to my knees, my vision blurring before I finally crumpled into a heap. When I next awoke, I found myself in a small room. It couldn't have been more than 6 feet by 8 feet, and the cot I was on was shrunken to match. Terrible pain lanced through my skull. I tenderly reached above me to feel a small welt that was forming on my scalp. How did that pixie manage to break her promise? Did Artemis lie when she said that they couldn't break those oaths? If that was the case, I had half a mind to leave her behind on the mission on principle alone. As the metal door opened, the hinges let out a loud screech that tore through my ears, making my headache even worse. Hey, you alive in there? The man who spoke to me was ripped from bottom to top. Stretched tightly across his chest was a shirt that read "Tap Out" in big bold lettering. He stared down at me through a pair of reflective sunglasses, odd considering that we were inside. Who are you? He let out a huff. Yeah, you'll live. Good to know. I was worried they'd make me dig the grave. I want to see. I want to see. A woman I didn't recognize excitedly shoved him aside, making her way past him into the room. As my eyes adjusted, the stunning vision that was in front of me made my heart skip a beat. As physically attractive as Artemis was, this woman was easily thrice so. It was then I was certain I'd truly seen the most beautiful woman in the world. She was pure poetry. I actually thought I would cry. Her bright blue eyes gleamed like stars, and her lips were like full rose petals just begging to be kissed. When she smiled at me, it brightened the room, and I couldn't help but to feel feverish. Her long hair was spun from gold and drifted down to the low-cut crop top that struggled to contain her breasts. When she bent over to take a closer look at me, my gaze struggled to stay on her eyes, as I was certain that one look down her shirt would slay me. Just as I thought, she beamed. He's totally a switch. Completely sub until his dom has a moment of weakness. I was so distracted it took me a moment to realize she'd spoken. What did you say? Aw, how precious. He hasn't even had his sexual awakening yet. Well, don't you worry. I can help with that, cutie. I turned a deep scarlet as my body screamed to the heavens, Dear God, please, yes. Meanwhile, my mind did everything in its power to continue functioning. Sweetheart, the man behind her began. Oh, don't fret, darling, she said over her shoulder in her refined mid-Atlantic accent. You know that as much as I wander, I always come back to you at the end of the day. Turning back to face me, she ran her tongue over her lips to moisten them. And I actually wondered for a moment if it would be worth getting into a fight with the muscle man for the opportunity to kiss them. I know, but... What are you two doing? Artemis interrupted, barging past them to stand between them and myself. He's supposed to be resting. He's not an animal at a zoo. He's a human. Ooh, the alpha arrives, the older woman teased. Artemis clenched her fist, and I could tell that she was ready to throw down with this woman. Reject your claws, Kitty. I have no wish to steal him from you. If he were to choose to come on his own, however, I wouldn't turn him away. Put the possibility out of your mind, Aphrodite. He will not be one of your puppets. Oh, that's who you are, I exclaimed. I can't believe I didn't figure it out sooner. It makes so much sense. I'll take that as a compliment, she purred. You may also know my husband, Ares. She gestured to the man beside her, who gave a half-hearted nod to me. What happened? I asked Artemis. I remember fighting with Nike, and then... She conked you on your darling little head, and we brought you here to recover, Aphrodite explained. What were you thinking, turning your back on such a wretched creature? Surely Athena taught you better than that. I'm afraid she didn't get much time to teach him anything, Artemis replied hotly. Now, if you'll excuse us, we are incredibly busy, and we need to return to training. Return to training? Aphrodite sat beside me and wrapped her arms around me protectively. No, no, no. The poor boy needs to rest. He may be awake, but if you send him right back out there against that brute, next time he may not wake up at all. Artemis was seething with rage as she flexed her fingers in anticipation of strangling the woman. I'm fine, I replied meekly, though with Aphrodite so close to me it couldn't be further from the truth. I felt feverish, and I was sure that my face was beet red. See, he's fine, the huntress commented. And if he dies from a concussion, do you plan on being the one to inform his family of his activities? Or do you intend to simply abandon his father to the cruel fate of not knowing what happened to his son? Maybe he'll be sent to the stars like a certain someone else. With a creak, Artemis' bow bent backwards, an arrow already strung and pointed at the beauty beside me. Do not mention him ever again. Artemis was enraged. I never saw her so angry before, regardless of anything I or Hera had done. Did I strike a nerve, little girl? She smirked before Ares quickly stepped between the two and worked to move her out. Sweetie, I think it would be best if we let the two talk, in private. Oh, but... I'm sure you'll see plenty more of him. If Athena isn't willing to train him properly, I will. Then you can ask him as many questions as you like. For now, however, I'm sure Artemis is concerned for her friend. Come on, we can stop at the Starbucks down the road while we wait. Fine, Aphrodite pouted, following her husband before turning to give me a flirty wave. Talk to you later, cutie, she called just before Artemis shut the door behind her, letting out an irritated growl. That dirty bitch-faced seducer of swine! Are you okay? I asked, moving to make room for her to sit beside me and placing my hands in my lap. My question seemed to knock her out of her anger as she remembered my presence. With a sigh, she sank onto the cot next to me and perched her chin in her hands. I imagine now you'll want to hear all about the mysterious him, she murmured. I'm curious, I confess, but it seems like a sensitive subject, so I won't ask unless you want to talk about it. Artemis took a deep breath. All you need to know is that I made a mistake in judgment. I won't make it again. So, what happened to gods not being able to break oaths on the river Styx? I asked, trying to change the subject. She flashed me a grin, grateful for the out. We're not. You just didn't listen carefully to the promise she made. What do you mean? She said she wouldn't attack you when you let her go. She didn't say anything about after you let her go, Artemis pointed out. Not a very honorable people, you gods, are you? Some of us are better than others. She visibly sank. She seemed to really feel guilty about what happened. I'm glad you're okay, Will. I was really worried about you. You were? That's a nice change of pace. Don't let it get to your head. I promised you would be okay, didn't I? As a goddess, I'm bound to my oath. What happens if a god breaks their oath? They become mortal. All of the years you've lived catch up to you and you die. No one can touch the river Styx and live, not even gods. To break the oath is to swim in its waters. That's horrible. Why would you make such a risky promise? It's the only way I could get you to trust me. I don't make those oaths lightly, but I can't have you worried I'll betray you. Artemis, I do trust you. Don't ever swear on that to me again, okay? What if I died? That would mean you'd have died too, and that's not okay. She turned a bright red, averting her eyes from me. So, are you ready to train some more? She asked, wanting to change the subject again. Actually, about that. The light in her eyes dimmed. You don't want to. I understand. It's not that I don't want to, it's just that Athena didn't seem too concerned with teaching me, so much as she was enjoying Nike pummeling me. She can be a little eccentric sometimes, Artemis agreed. I paused for a moment. Artemis, I trust you. You're the only one I trust. If someone is going to train me, I want it to be you. I want you to teach me archery. Artemis' eyes widened for a moment before her brow furrowed. No. No? By Hades, no. I'm not going to teach you archery, and before you even think of asking, neither will Apollo. I've given you an opportunity mortals only dream of, Will. Either learn from Athena or don't learn at all. Why won't you teach me? You want me to learn to protect myself? This is the best way. Because I said so. You forget your place. We are friends, but I am the goddess. You are the mortal. You listen to me, not the other way around. You got that? Her words stung me hard. It hurt to think she just saw me as a servant to groom. I stared at the floor before she gripped my shoulder tightly, turning me to look at her. Am I making myself clear, mortal? So that's how it's going to be then? Fine. I shoved past her and walked out the door. She didn't even move to go after me. Thankfully, I'd just found a better teacher anyway. Emerging from the corridor, I found myself back in the main room. There, sitting in the middle of the mat, Athena and Nike were having a cup of tea. When she saw me, the small girl gave me a smug grin. Well, it looks like the mortal is back on his feet. Ready for round two, or are you too chicken? I had no intention of giving her insults the light of day. That, and I really didn't want her to see me tear up. Where are you going? Athena asked, following me outside. When I ignored her, she roughly grabbed my wrist, jerking me to a stop. Will, I'm talking to you. You don't walk away from your teacher when she's talking to you. You are not my teacher, I shouted, snatching my wrist from her grip. You may think it's funny to watch me get knocked around, but I don't, so just leave me alone. Will, I know you're upset, so I'll forgive your tone this once, but you need to understand. No, I'm done. I'm not doing this. You guys all think you're so great because you're immortal. Well, if you're so great, then you can take care of your own damn problems. Our problems are your problems, she stated, maintaining her composure with a new, infinite patience. Artemis has filled me in on your situation. Hera is not one to be trifled with. Then I'll get Ares and Aphrodite to train me. So far, they're the only ones who seem to give half a damn about me anyway. With that, I turned on my heels and left the stunned goddess in front of her dojo. I recalled Ares saying they'd stop at the coffee shop up the road. If they were still there, it'd be the perfect opportunity. Hopefully, he was serious about his offer. Otherwise, I was screwed. Sure enough, when I opened the door to the dimly lit cafe, I immediately pegged out the couple. Ares was sitting beside his wife, reading a newspaper, while Aphrodite took a picture of her drink with her cell phone. There weren't many others there, but those who were, men and women alike, were transfixed on the well-endowed blonde. Ares looked up to regard me as I slid into place on the other side of their table. I want you to train me, I stated plainly. I don't care how hard I have to work or how difficult it is. As long as you swear to me that you can make me a better fighter and don't just slap me around, I want in. Listen, kid, Ares started before Aphrodite cut him off. What Ares means to say is there's something of an assessment before you're allowed to go through his training. What? He and I asked simultaneously. You're not the only mortal who wants to be trained by my husband, Aphrodite explained, gingerly running her finger along her straw. So in order to be allowed to train with him, you have to pass a test to ensure you're worth the effort. Right, honey? Yeah, he agreed cautiously. What kind of test? What kind indeed, Ares murmured to himself. An oral test. I will of course be your lovely proctor, but may I recommend that we go somewhere a little more private? I swallowed nervously. This is like the start of a bad porno. I doubted everyone had to do this to get training, but if it meant getting my life back, I guess I'd just have to suffer the fate of pleasing a beautiful woman. Where did you have in mind? There's a park a couple of blocks down from here, nice and secluded. Would you be a gentleman and escort me there? She accented her question with a fluttering of eyelashes. Sure, I stammered, standing up and taking the delicate hand that she offered me. Giving me a coy smile, she stood from the bridge before grabbing her drink. Ares also stood to leave, but Aphrodite quickly turned and placed a hand on his shoulder. That won't be necessary. This is just for us two. Don't worry, I'll be back later. Try not to miss me too much, okay? The bulky man grumbled something under his breath, but otherwise he kept his mouth shut and returned to his paper. Now I was even more concerned. If I was doing what I thought I was going to be doing, and I was doing it to his wife, I wasn't certain he would agree to train me after. Even still, I allowed Aphrodite to wrap her arm around mine as the two of us strolled down the street. She seemed to enjoy making a show of it as well. The way her soft body pressed against mine was wonderful, and everyone we passed shot me envious glances. Tightening her grip, she rested her head on my shoulder as we walked until we finally arrived at the park she had spoken of. Sure enough, there were small pathways that led through trees and flower gardens with benches that visitors could sit on. Despite how beautiful the scenery was, there was almost no people, though considering it was the middle of a school day, of course the park would be empty. So, are you going to tell me what happened, or will I have to pry it out of you? Sorry. I'm the goddess of love, Will. I know heartbreak when I see it. I don't want to talk about it, I murmured. I just want to take my tests, do my training, and get out of this crazy life. Sit with me. She sank onto one of the benches that resided beneath a shady tree. Looking up at me, she patted the spot beside her. After a moment of hesitation, I did as she instructed. She gave a soft sigh, pulling me so that my head rested in her lap. You seem like a sweet boy, Will, she purred, her fingers absently playing with my dark hair. My first question for your exam is, why do you want to be trained by my husband? Athena's training wasn't working out for me. The entire time I was sparring with Nike, her only words of advice were hit her and don't get hit. I'm hoping Ares will train me in a way that doesn't treat me like a joke. Interesting, she mused, continuing to stroke me. How did you stumble into all of us gods anyway? I assume Artemis was your first encounter. I met her at a museum. She was disguised as a student in my father's elementary school class. I saw her slip away from the group, so I chased her down. We were attacked by monsters, so she and I fought our way out. At first, I thought I was going crazy, and I didn't want to believe she was real, but she grew on me once I got to know her. I imagine that wasn't easy. Artemis has a reputation of being difficult. That's putting it mildly. Well, Artemis is a lot of things, Will, but cruel isn't one of them. As much as she generally dislikes the rest of our strange family, if one of us truly needed help, she wouldn't hesitate to give us assistance. Take me, for example. She loathes me, but when one of my pet doves was sick, she was there to give it treatment. Of course, she says she did it for the dove, not for me, but it still doesn't change that she was there. Maybe she cares more for the dove than she dislikes you, I suggested. I suppose that's possible. Next question. Which goddess do you like the most? I sat up slowly to look at her, puzzled. What does that have to do with training? It doesn't, but I'm curious. I don't know how to answer that, I replied. Of the ones you've met so far? I've only met 5. You, Artemis, Athena, Nike, and Hera. Aphrodite's eyes narrowed. You've met Hera. How did that happen? She's the principal at my school. When she found out that I'd met Artemis, she called me into her office to ask me to spy on them. What did you say? I told her no, but then she told me that I'd have to do a mission for her. If I didn't, she said she'd alter my transcripts so I couldn't get into college. She'd also expel me so I couldn't get a diploma either. Aphrodite let out a cry of disgust. That old crow! Ooh, I hate how she bullies people. You poor thing, I'm so sorry that happened to you. Wrapping her arms around me, she pulled me tightly to her chest, causing my pulse to rise. But I digress. You still haven't answered my question. So tell me, Will, which of us do you like most? As she spoke, she tilted my head to look deep into my eyes, and again I was struck by her beauty. I don't know, I repeated, stumbling over my words. You are very kind and beautiful, but... But? I paused, trying to think of a response. What was it that was holding me back from telling her that she was my favorite? What did it matter anyway? Artemis didn't care about me, so why should I care about her? I don't know. Some part of me still cares about Artemis, even if she doesn't care about me. What makes you think that? I asked her to teach me archery, and she refused. She told me that I'd forgotten my place, that she was a goddess and I was a mortal, and that meant that I had to listen to her, not the other way around. She treated me like a slave, not like a person. Ah, so now we've found the root of your problem, Aphrodite grinned. You are concerned that she doesn't see you as a person. I know she doesn't. I'm going to let you in on a little secret, Will. Now you mustn't tell Artemis I told you this, or she will be furious with me. Do you promise? I promise. Good. She won't teach you archery, because the last time she taught a mortal archery, he broke her heart. Believe me, Will, she sees you as a person, and that's what terrifies her. I let out a scoff. Yeah, right. Artemis afraid of me? She wiped out an army of monsters by herself. There are things people fear other than physical harm, Will. She's afraid if she exposes her heart to you that it will break again. The first time, it was devastating for her. She's trying to make sure it doesn't happen again. My eyes looked down at the ground in shame, and I fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. I sighed. I really am an idiot. No, Will, you're not an idiot. You're just a man, and Artemis is a woman. We learn these things naturally, you know. It doesn't change anything. If she won't get close to me, how can I possibly get close to her? Instead of answering my question, Aphrodite placed her fingers beneath my chin and pulled my lips to rest against hers. And that is where we are going to call it for tonight, guys. That will be the end of chapter 5. We are now on chapter 6. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really do hope that you have enjoyed listening to me read. As I said, this is my most recent completed and published novel. If you want to purchase it, you can find it on Amazon. The title is Oracle by J.C. Roberts. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for tuning in.